today. My name is Stephanie Van Bark, and I'm a small business owner. Today's subject, as many of you know, this show is about business, and we've talked to many business owners about their pivot plan. That's kind of the context of the show. This today's show is a very serious subject matter. It is a business that I personally wish would go out of business very quickly. But we have an expert on who will give us a little bit more insight and information as to how this business operates and is able to operate in the way that it is. He's very passionate. I wish I could have eavesdropped a little bit on our conversation before we got started because he's very passionate about the subject matter. We are inviting. Hey, here you go. Hi, Victor. How are you?
Hey, Stephanie, how are you?
And he is the expert that is going to school us, actually. And I'll be the first to say I was telling him I don't know a lot about the subject matter, human trafficking. So let's get into the conversation if you don't mind. If you will start with who are you and what do you do?
So my name is Victor Williams. I am a retired special agent with Homeland Security Investigations, which the last 8 years of my career, I focused on human trafficking cases, which changed my life as a father, as an agent, and just as a human being. It just woke me up and really gave me the insight that how much culture really plays a part in this horrific crime. After retiring in 2018, I did a couple years team security for the Atlanta Hawks, and which was a great opportunity, but really didn't feed my soul. And so I left Hawks, and just to let people know, you're in your right place, and as much as you try to run from your passion and purpose, it's going to catch up with you. So when I left the Hawks, Georgia had just gotten their grant for human trafficking, and I did a year as a human trafficking coordinator for the state of Georgia. Moved back here in 2001, August of 2001, kind of didn't really do a lot, was just trying to figure out my way. But I ended up doing a human trafficking presentation for the NBA. They had their security conference here before the season started. And the reason I ended up doing a human trafficking presentation for them is because I won't give out the city, but I will tell you it wasn't Miami and it wasn't Georgia. A father took his 15-year-old daughter to a game, and she went to the bathroom. And the next time he saw his daughter was 11 days later when they were rescuing her from a hotel being sold for sex. And so that kind of woke me up and like, Vic, it's time to get it together. And I just opened up my own NGO, Quest to Freedom, which is a organization that educates on the cultural awareness of human trafficking. And we also provide services for victims in the immediate sense when we find them. As an agent and even working for the state of Georgia, when we came in contact with victims, we had to look for other agencies to provide that immediate care for victims, whether it was a hotel stay for a week, a plane ticket home, until we got to their long-time service provider. So that's what we do at Quest to Freedom. And if you want to check us out, we're at questtofreedom.org. And that's Quest, the number 2, freedom, all one word.
So, okay. Well, and let me say this really quickly. While we're talking, he gave me a series of numbers that I am going to scroll periodically across. And then, of course, we'll say those subjects again. Or actually that will appear. And they are national numbers, local numbers, Homeland Security numbers. You will see them and please take them down. Let's start with this. I don't know that we all know. I told you that I've done a test recently, and I don't think we all know what really human trafficking is. I think we have perceptions based on what we see in the movies, but
Right.
Tell us, please define what that is.
So I'll keep it simple. There are 3 words that really define human trafficking, and those words are force, fraud, and coercion. I'll start with fraud because fraud is the weaker of the elements. A lot of prosecutors believe like, hey, come to Miami, be a model. But when you get here, they really want you doing something else that's illegal or something that you don't want to do. And prosecutors believe at that point, if it's not what you're supposed to do, you can walk away. But usually when you come here under those terms of fraud, it's usually force and coercion that really, people are trafficked. Force, I beat you to make you do what I want you to do. Coercion is the threat of beating you, harming your family, not giving you your drugs, kicking you out of anything that you think you may need, and someone is using that to make you do things. Coercion. Those are the three elements. The key that you should know about those three elements, those elements only apply to adults. So if you're a child under the age of 18, I don't need any of those elements. If you're being commercially, sexually exploited, or even labor trafficked, you are a victim. A child can't choose to sell themselves. So when we passed our first human trafficking laws came on the book in the year 2000, where we had the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, the TVPA. And in that law, at the year 2000, it said, there's no such thing as child prostitution. But it took the state of Florida 16 years to finally pass that law. No more arresting kids for prostitution. Right. Now, in 2012, we did have what we call the safe harbor law that gave us some programming, and it gave police officers other options than arresting. But I believe that there's still some states out there arresting kids for prostitution when the federal law say they are victims. And that's something that we all got to understand.
Right. And you tapped on something there, really. Again, just based on my knowledge of what I've seen, when you think human trafficking, you generally think it's primarily about sex trafficking, but there are labor scenarios. So if you could talk a little bit about, how that plays in
So the reason, so sex trafficking, everybody, when they think about human trafficking, they think about sex trafficking. There's many reasons why. It's definitely horrific situations with children and women when they're forced to have sex with people. And I don't call that sex. That is rape. Every time someone that is caught up in that situation, they're being raped, which is adding on to their trauma. Another reason why, because of culture. And look, I'm not demonizing the strip club industry. It is a legal industry, but every strip club, the women that work in that space aren't there because they want to be there. A lot of women are there because of human trafficking, and we don't know this. So sex trafficking is where we all stay. But when it comes to labor trafficking is 60 to 70% of all trafficking around the world. What does that mean? If you own a cell phone, if you buy clothes, and if you buy food, you have a minimum of 40 to 60 slaves working for you. And basically what I'm saying is, if we're buying products from slave labor, and that includes myself, I do have a cell phone, so I'm not taking myself out of this equation. But if we're buying products from slave labor, we're all part of the problems, whether we know it or not.
So you tap on something, and I told you earlier, I'm very cautious about throwing this number out here. This is a worldwide problem, especially in this country, but elsewhere. Economic engines have been driven by human capital, slavery. This country was built on slavery. Yes. It's a $150 billion industry, which means folks are making money in this industry. Right. So, and in what my research determines, around the world, 93% of countries have made this illegal. How is this able to thrive, even though we recognize as a society, it's not acceptable? It's not okay.
So I'll start off here. A lot of people don't even know that Human Trafficking Month is January. President Obama made January 11th Human Trafficking Day, but people that work in this space celebrate that whole month to educate people. Now, the month after that is Black History Month. Every company, every organization is waving that flag. Next month, we're going to have Cancer Awareness Month. Every company, every organization is going to be waving that flag. So when it comes to January, why we're not waving the flags is because a lot of companies and that chain supply have these issues.
Okay.
Because we want cheap stuff. right? And it seems that nobody cares unless it's your family member that's caught up in that. I normally like to hit people with this. Take, for instance, if you eat chocolate, and you can fact check me on this by Googling the dark side of chocolate. If you eat chocolate and you're not buying fair trade chocolate, making sure you go online, you Google fair trade, you put your chocolate product in there and see if it's showing up, most likely your chocolate product starts on the west coast of Africa with a stolen or sold child picking a cocoa bean.
Okay.
So, what are we doing?
So then let's talk about that. What are some of the strategies? 'Cause let's be real candid.
Yeah.
We can talk about the cultural aspect of it, but as long as people are making money off of it,
Right.
there's got to be a strategy put in place to put these folks out of business. So, are there strategies? Are we having conversations right now about how that happens and working to try to um, make sure folks who are pondering it um, see the side of it that says, if not even playing to their humanity, playing to their greed,
Well,
as to why this is not the business you want to get into.
because it's about education. Like I look at our lawmakers, they got 1,000 things to talk about. Everybody knows human trafficking is bad. And, we still have experts claiming that it's number one or number three. In my opinion, human trafficking is the number one crime in the world. Just the fact that all of us, mentioning those three things, how 40 or 60 slaves working for us, how do you factor that in to the equation, right?
Mm-hmm.
You say drugs number one, it's $150 billion a year industry. Well, you know what? These are all guesstimations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you have huge companies that is part of their supply chain, and we know how our politics work, as long as I'm putting money in your campaign, I'm not even looking at what you're doing, right? And it's really about the education. So there have been years where the TVPA, the Trafficking Victim Protection Act, has been amended. Like in the beginning, a human trafficking person may have only got 10 to 15 years. Now those punishments have been upgraded to 20 to 30 years, and some are lifetime sentencings. So there are some changes. If your money is derived from human trafficking and you bought a house and a car, but that's part of the money laundering situation that we did with drugs. Yeah, we could come take the product.
Right.
It's really about education, because even from politicians to the pimp or the person that's buying, we're all, it's that cultural aspects that just makes it okay. I like to use this mindset. It's like, if you ever heard the words prostitution, the world's oldest profession, my response to that is because we're the world's oldest customer, right? And if we're not, but it's culturally, we make the person selling and who could be the potential victim, the bad guy, instead of making our culture focus on the people who are creating the market, right?
I agree.
And by the way, farming is the world's oldest profession.
Let's get that straight. And now it's legal. Y'all can do that. And I'm from the South, so that's a good thing. So, you tapped on something, and again, I'll own. I'm the person, I think I said to you before. When I think of human trafficking, there's not a face attached to it. It's sort of this esoteric thing that doesn't really exist in my world, or I didn't know that it existed in my world. I think I told you right before the show. I don't know of anyone that has it's in my immediate world that has experienced that. I did meet someone once who did share he had a niece that had gone through that scenario, and it was a sad scenario, but I never met the young lady. I was a little shocked by, based on the history of what he was saying, parents that are married, they were, grew up in the church, very educated, that this young lady got into this trafficking situation. Um, I guess, how do we now try to make some of these victims more human, dispel some of the myths, so we as people can become more active in helping to shut some of this down?
So human trafficking is the results of a lot of things that have already gone wrong in somebody's life.
Mhm.
All right, so let's start there. Human trafficking victims are created at home. We have trauma, we have generational trauma. A lot of people tend to raise their children the way that they were raised, and if that was a lot of violence, verbal abuse, and they think that they're okay, they turned out okay, then that
Mhm.
same tactic worked for their children. It is not true. It is trauma, and let's understand what it is. Trauma, unresolved trauma creates vulnerability, and
Mhm.
that's what people seek to exploit, right? So if you got parents that are dealing with, and I tell parents right now, to the parents that are listening to this, if you got children, your main job is to have a relationship with them that they can talk to you about anything.
Right.
And if they can't come to you, who do they go to?
Right.
Yeah, we want our kids to make their beds, do their chores, make sure they do good in school. But you know what? If your child goes missing, you ain't even thinking about none of that stuff. It doesn't matter. What matters is you may be thinking, man, get my kid back and I'm going to be a better parent. But you know what? Be a better parent now.
Before that, before it becomes an issue.
Exactly, because this is where it all starts. And some parents are still dealing with their traumas that they haven't dealt with, and they're
Mhm.
taking it out on their kids, which is furthering, making the problem deeper. So let's just start at home. That's where it starts.
So let me go back to the business part of it. What should we as consumers, because again, this is enlightening for me. What can we as consumers do in this economy of, you mentioned, if you're looking for chocolate, you're looking for fair trade chocolate. What are some of the things we could be looking at and looking for when we're trying to identify vendors that we're shopping from that could, interfere with some of this trafficking?
Well, we live in Miami and it's all about the bling here, right? So
Hmm.
first of all, let's stop buying fake stuff. Because those people making fake purses and fake Rolexes and fake all this so you can merge into the crowd of to be seen, those products ain't being made by people who got a 401k or being treated nice or they got work environment rules. These products are being made by people who are trafficking people to make these products. Because first of all, it's against the law to sell fake products. And again, I don't know. Like I was talking to some friends about this the other day, like in places like in New York, Chinatown, where that's where people go. And I'm like, how do our lawmakers let people get away with selling these products when they know that it's against the law, first of all, and all that does is support human trafficking further. So I just tell people, look, nobody cares about this until somebody or you
Hmm.
love is caught up in this space. And that's when everybody like, oh no, I should have learned. We really need to start caring more about each other. And the more that we educate ourselves in this space, because it is it is the number one crime in the world. And like I told you before, we're not that far from knowing someone that's been a victim,
Hmm.
and as you learn in this space, you're like, man, you know what? I think she or he was a victim. Or knowing someone that knows someone that's a victim. So it's the more that we know, the more we could protect our children, our
Hmm.
families, our communities. And so when it comes to the dollar, and I'm gonna throw something out there that's gonna tell you, even on the side that we supposed to be helping victims, there have been people in the service section that have been exploiting victims. Like you get an organization and I'm trying to get this grant or get this donation. And so what do? Everybody wants a victim to come speak at their event.
Hmm.
They,
Hmm.
I tell you, I do not have, and I don't call them victims at that point. I call them survivors. I do not have a survivor speak or participate in any event with me without them making sure that they're getting paid for it.
Right, right,
Because
right, right, right.
because although we think we're trying to help by bringing this awareness, but yeah, come speak, come listen, and then we don't prepare them, and then
Right.
sometimes when these survivors are going, we're re-victimizing them that they
Hmm.
and making sure that they dealt with their trauma, that this is something that they want to do.
I
So
agree.
yeah, when you talk about business and you talk about money, even on the side that we're supposed to be helping, sometimes can be a problem.
So, what should we look for? And I'll talk about it for on both sides. What should we look for of a victim slash potential survivor, a young woman or young man, adult or kid? I've started to learn that might be stuck in one of these trafficking situations, and also the business. And when I say business, meaning there is somebody running this human trafficking operation. Who are we looking at and saying we believe that's who they are?
Well, I told you earlier that I took a class today in human trafficking. Like I say, you never stop learning. So I knew I was coming on with you earlier, and I wanted to take some notes. And I have some of this stuff already. It's just to make sure I'm giving your. I mean, listen, if you got kids that got purses and clothes and phones that you can't even afford. And it's not just one thing. It's a combination of a bunch of things. I like to educate, especially we live in South Florida and we have a lot of immigrants here. I like to especially talk about this particular thing. If you work in a service providing situation and you have to ask people for their ID and they go, oh, I got to get my ID from this person. One thing that you need to know is the first thing a trafficker is going to do is take away your ID, your passport. Why? Because when they take away that, you can't get on a bus, plane, or train. You can't apply for a job without an ID. So they just took your way of travel and your way of getting away from the situation. So be aware of people being controlled. There's a lot of things where Uber drivers have saved young ladies that were being trafficked by listening. The one Uber story where this guy has this girl that looks like she's 12 and these two women, again, women can be traffickers too, sitting in the car and educating, oh, when you get up there, girl, when you get to apartment B, because you already got the address, make sure you get the money first and then do this and then do that. So obviously that seems like a sex working situation for an underage kid. And he called the police because he knew what apartment they were going to and ended up saving a child. It's how they look. We know that traffickers brand their victims. My B, money signs, this property belongs to me. In my presentation, I have a picture of a young lady that got the word loyalty tattooed to her face. And when I saw that years ago on Facebook, everybody was slamming this young girl. Oh, she's an idiot. She's stupid. She ain't never gonna make it. And then I asked the question, any of you guys think that this young lady is a victim of human trafficking? And everybody shut up. Right. And she was. So one thing we have to do is stop victim blaming. One of the things we constantly talk about is one of the things that we've done is stop showing human trafficking victims in photos with them being tied up, chained to a bed.
Yeah.
Because that's what you get. So those people are obviously victims. So what we have to understand is this. You have people out there that are willing to do what they're doing and people that are being forced to do what they're doing. And the only way we can tell the difference is what's happening in their head. And right now we can't read your mind. So what people need to know, just because you see somebody that's not tied down, we can't assume they're free. Because if I got your mind, I got your body. Those are the invisible chains, So
what about the business owner, though? I mean, you mentioned kind of lightly, definitely a young person with way more money than they should have. What are some other identifying factors that somebody is actually running an operation where they are trafficking?
Well, let's talk about one of the biggest issues that we've had for years here: massage parlors. One of the things that, we talk about policies that should be written, like for instance, strip clubs. And we have these, I just learned a statistic today that the FBI says that we still have almost 50% of underage kids working in strip clubs. So what does that mean? And we've passed laws that these strip clubs have to not verify, but validate the women that are coming in there. So are they fake IDs and Social Security so tough that they can't tell the difference? So one of the things that I say we should do to strip clubs, like they do in West Palm Beach, is we make people that work in that space register. Now we get, and now not only you register with the state and you get a card that says you're okay to work in that space, but now we get to educate you on what to look for if you choose to go in that space. Massage parlors. Doral shut down their massage parlors at 11 o'clock. You know, if you're going to get a massage 2, 3 in the morning, you don't need to be there. You know, if women are going in massage parlors and they don't serve women, that's another sign, right? That what's going on here? What do you mean you don't serve women? So, I mean, that's been a challenge that we've had for years and still a challenge to address businesses that are caught up in this space. And, but again, I go back to, January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. Why aren't businesses waving the flag? Why aren't they, waving the flag like they do for Black History Month? Why aren't businesses waving the flag like they do for next month? It's going to be Cancer Awareness Month, because a lot of these businesses have that issue in their chain from the moment products are being made till they get to you buying them. They got these issues and they ain't willing to wave that flag and bring that attention to themselves.
Well, what happens if a business is identified as being a front or a back with regards to human trafficking? Are they immediately shut down? Is there
Well,
forgiveness?
I would say it all depends on what politician, they got in their pockets. I give you an example. There's a strip club on the Miami Beach that at one time was found to have a 13-year-old girl working in there. We shut it down for 6 months. Why they weren't shut down permanently, I don't know. And these are the type of things that need to be happening when these clubs violate these rules. They need to be shut down, and they're not. I used to be a part of an organization. It was called COAST, Club Operators Against Sex Trafficking, and these are some strip clubs that, we don't want this in our business, but sometimes it's hard for them to not do. We did a, I'm not going to name any clubs. We did an undercover where we went in and we went to the champagne room and the girl offered herself and she got arrested for prostitution, right?
But we didn't get the owner because that was happening. Exactly.
I called the owner and said, yo, man, what's going on? Oh, Vic, when we see this, we fired him. Well, how about we pass a state law that says no more champagne rooms? Because I know they're all competing, right? So we make them all operate on the same level. How about no more champagne rooms, no more private rooms? Because we know what's going on in those private rooms.
Which is my point of, we've got to hit the business. We've got to hit the pocket, but we just keep arresting the victim.
That's because, and I don't want to disrespect politicians. I know they got 1,000 things to do, but until somebody they love is caught up in this, maybe they'll wake up. And I hate to say that, but if one child is caught up in this and we're not outraged and doing something about it, what hopes do the adults have in this space who probably started as a child?
Now, let me ask you, is it true? I'm going to ask you for a series of true and false questions and you'll expand. Is it true this is a problem for only other countries?
It's a problem worldwide. America leads in a lot of these issues. We're number one in a lot of these issues.
Really?
Yes. It's worldwide. There's not a country. Matter of fact, the State Department grades every country every year. And if they want, it's called the TIPS report. If you want to go to different countries and you want to read what their human trafficking situation is like, they'll send you can Google it. You can go online, TIPS report. And they grade countries in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. When we came out with the TVPA, we grade these countries in 3 areas: protection, prosecution, and prevention. So we're like, those are the 3 P's of human trafficking. There's been a 4th P that's not part of the law: partnership, because nobody fights this alone. Law enforcement can't do it. We're not going to arrest our way out of this. Service providers. So those 3 P's where countries are being, and a lot of countries are failing in the prosecution. So if you're a tier 1, you're addressing all 3 P's. If you're a tier 2, you're missing one of the P's. And if you're a tier 3, your country is probably part of the problem. And it's because the country in itself, the culture itself, helped promotes this.
And where are we?
Well, we're tier 1. but we still got our problems. No, there's no doubt. We are tier one. We address these issues in every state, all three. But do we still have issues? Yeah, we still got a long ways to go in this. Like I said, there might be a state out there. Maybe I should know this, but I don't. That's still arresting kids under the age of 18 for prostitution when the law says they're victims. Georgia didn't pass that law until 2019.
Okay, that was
So
very recent.
why does it take so long for us to get a law and then adhere to this law in this case when it comes to our kids?
Right,
That tells you how hard it is to fight culture.
right. So, is it true that this only affects young girls and or women?
No, I'm part of an organization right now that we're about to do a huge conference in 2024 on the trafficking of males, men and boys. When I retired in 2018, there was an uptick of 46% of men being trafficked in this space. Now,
Mm,
why aren't men? Because listen, we live in a country where we dislike people for the people they choose to love, right?
right,
So if I'm not gay, but I'm a victim of human trafficking and had to be with a man, well, I'm going to tell people.
right.
And
Shame.
I'm glad you brought this up because the LGBTQ plus community is getting killed in this because they can't get a job because of the people they choose to love. And another very vulnerable community is the elderly community and benefit fraud. They're being mistreated for their checks.
Wow, I
Fraud
never thought about that.
is a huge thing that's going on. And not that we didn't know, but there are not even any laws and things to address it.
Who's who's doing this? Like, what is who's
I mean,
the?
like say you're a retired vet or you're an elderly person and you got your check and these care. I mean, they're like,
Caregiver?
I've seen cases where they have these fake advertisement. They look very professional. We'll take care of your elderly, and you bring them in, and a lot of people they turn their elderly over to these people, and they're not following up. And
Right.
there's some horrible cases out there of elderly people being abused for that monthly Social Security check, or vets for their monthly vet checks. And
Okay.
we're just not aware of this.
I never thought of that. Yeah. I mean, it's so much stuff out there that if you're not in it, you just kind of live your life and you're not aware.
Exactly.
Is it true? This is only a problem for Caucasian families, for white families.
No, this is everybody. It's just like drugs. Drugs don't care if you're black, white, purple, or green. And as you mentioned, the business of this, it's all about the money. They don't care if you're white, black, purple, or green. If they can get you in a situation, understand your vulnerability, traffickers, especially in the sex area, are going to approach you as they're your best friends. Because
Mhm.
remember, when we talk about this starts at home, everybody just want to be loved. Everybody wants to be accepted. There are people who join gangs to be loved. And what we learn about gangs now, because I did a conference up in Georgia. In Georgia, their gang association they make all their officers get trained in human trafficking, get certified in human trafficking, because we know that gang people not only sell women to make money, so
Mhm.
that's trafficking. They're also labor trafficking in gangs because what if I don't rob this store or beat up this person? What's going to happen to me, right?
Right.
So that's the coercion part. So we know that trafficking is in that space. I used to say, the child that runs away from home, the child that joins the gang, and the child that leaves to go to college. The one thing that they all have in common is that they're vulnerable and they're
Right.
all looking to belong, right? We all want to attach to good people, or we don't even know. We just want to belong to something, and
Right.
people to give us some love that we didn't get at home. So, just one of those wake up calls for families to wake up and understand what's going on.
So, I gotta say, as I mentioned, this is sort of the first week this has become front and center for me, and so you've got me pondering this idea of how I can make a difference. And for me, I know it would definitely try to be more conscious of where I'm buying things. Um, you know, what's the real strategy? What are strategies? What's the plan? What are we? really putting at the forefront in an innovative way, trying to do differently to put the kibosh on this, and our countries working together to make that happen?
So when I was with Homeland, our plan was to understand the victim-centered trauma informed, which that means is like in law enforcement. When I came across a victim, I had to worry about the victim. It's not about my case. It made me very upset when I hear an officer say to me, "Oh, she's not a real victim." I go, "Why?" Because she's not cooperating with my case. People
Mhm.
have to understand that these people and victims are traumatized. And every time they're forced to have sex, they're being raped. That's adding more trauma. So they don't operate in the same space that we operate in. So first of all, we had to understand that. Secondly, we had to understand the partnerships. Nobody fights this crime alone. You know, when we first started the South, I used to be the 6 of the 8 of my last years as an agent. I was the coordinator for the South Florida Human Trafficking Task Force, where, you know, we had to bring the community together. And it was very difficult to do that. And we used to fight the service providers. No, I need the victim for my case. You know, this person ain't ready. We need to get,
Right.
you know, like they ain't gonna be no good on you sitting on the stand all traumatized. And so we had to learn that it's about them. So that partnership with the service providing community and law enforcement is very important, which brings another thing that I forgot to mention. I do hold a title as the vice chair of the Miami-Dade Human Trafficking Coalition, which is run by an organization run by Dade County, is the Coordinated Victims Center Assistance Center, CVAC, which caters to human trafficking victims, sexual assault, child abuse, and any type of crime that is a crime of violence and sex. You can go to this center. We got grants for housing. We got grants to help you with your rent. We got all kind of grants to help victims, you know, because victims need a wraparound service in order for them to get back to the life that they want to have. It takes a lot of support. And you want to talk about, you know, it takes a community. How they used to say it takes a
It's a
community.
village.
It takes a village to get people back on track. And
Mhm.
so CVAC is a place that people can go for services. And I know I gave you all that information to put for your viewers to check out. So
Yeah, that's on the banner right below. So there's the number, and we'll go through that. Um, Again, I want to make sure everybody gets this information. Before we go, two final questions. Uh, I'm a parent who thinks my child is being trafficked. What do I do first, second, or third?
well, I mean, if you think this is happening, and tomorrow I'm going to be talking to, and I'm going to tell you how serious this is. I'm going to be talking to a, a, a doctor. He's a doctor, right? About his child possibly be being trafficked and try to figure this out. I tell parents, listen, and a lot of times when you think this, everybody wants that bad guy to get caught. Everybody wants I want that person to pay. You know what? Worry about your kid.
Right.
Worry about your child. Try to get, and if you're going to get therapy for your child, and if you're even taking therapy, make sure you're getting trauma informed therapy, because we can deal with the surface issue. But if we're not dealing with the core, we're still carrying on these issues. So I tell parents, you know, if you think your child, call the hotline. I would rather it not be human trafficking than for you to miss. But even if you don't want law enforcement involved, you can find at, you know, calling the hotlines, you can find services. And like I say, if you're in Miami, go to CVAC. They got therapy, and everybody that's part of the Miami-Dade Human Trafficking Coalition that provides services, those services are free. So we have therapy, we have all types of services that we offer, you know, our survivors. So find services, worry about the bad guy later. You know, we'll get him. But, you know, if you get your child back together, maybe they can help us get him. But, you know, it's about the victim. Everything is about the victim first.
So before we go, we do want to figure out how we can find you or find these resources. And you gave us four numbers. I've actually been periodically showing them throughout the episode, which I've never done before, but I really am passionate about making sure whatever we can do to help, we will. The one that is on there now is Miami-Dade County CVAC.
Yes.
Um, So if you will go through the numbers, I'll pull them up again.
Well,
Um,
the first one I would say is polarisproject.org. That organization runs the national hotline. That number you have right there, 888. I normally give it 888-3737-888. It just sounds better. But you can also find going on their website, because we get the problems that we have with numbers and human trafficking is that it is not a block on a police report, which we're pushing to do. Two things happens if I want to know how many robberies are in my county, I could go online and find out because of that block, and it goes into a system. Well, if we can do that, we would get better numbers. And secondly, that means law enforcement have to learn. We're still struggling with educating law enforcement about this, which is a majority male, profession, which has to break a lot of cultural barriers to understand what this is, right? So Polaris Project, they get their numbers by the calls. And I'll tell you right now, the top 3 states, California is number 1, Texas number 2, Florida is number 3. It's been that way for years. So, and then, of course, you had the CVAC number if you're a victim or a survivor and you want services. We also have the Homeland Security Hotline, which they'll do sex trafficking and labor trafficking. What we have to understand, most of our labor trafficking victims are victims from another country where they use their documentation issues. If you don't work these extra hours, if you don't take this less pay, if you don't give me half your pay, if you don't have sex with me, I'm going to report you to Homeland Security. So, and that number is right there. That's the Homeland Security Hotline. So there are resources out there. You can Google, and when you look at the project, Polaris Project, you'll find a lot of resources, and you can always go to our website, quest2freedom.org. And some of the, we're kind of, new as far as we don't have our website where we want it, because eventually we're going to have an app that, people like apps on their phone. You could go to this app. If you're anywhere in Florida, you need services. There's going to be a map of Florida laid out. You hit where you are, you'll find different services that you need. It's going to be educational. And really what I like to tell people, if you ever witness anything, I don't tell people to jump in and get involved. I don't want you to endanger your life. But what we want people to start doing is being good witnesses. Everybody got the mysterious white van, but it ain't just the white van. It could be anything. Take pictures, document so that you can report it. And you ain't even got to say who you are. But just think about it. If that's somebody you love, you want people to get involved. You want people to get good information to provide to the police so they can find your loved one. So be good witnesses. Don't get caught up, freeze up, protect yourself. And you can snap a picture, write down a license plate, description of a car. We want people to be good witnesses, because that's what you would want if that was your loved one being, assaulted in that way.
Thank you so very much for the education. Thank you for calling us to task for those of us who have been blinded by the subject matter. It is a very important subject matter, and I thank you for sharing that information with us.
Remember, fair trade. It mostly deal with products like produce, but if you drink coffee, at least make sure your coffee is fair trade. If you're eating chocolate, you know what? 2 years from now, when we see fair trade products up, you will know you had a part in changing the world. So we'll find some other sources for other things out there, but the more you know, the more you get to really be a part of making the world a better place.
And will you promise to come back as we get more information about this? I definitely want to make sure we stay informed.
Anytime, as you can see, I love talking, especially.
So he was passionate.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for what you do.
No, thank you so much for having us, and please reach out if you need us for anything.
Okay, thanks so much. Well, thank you for joining us today. Again, as you can see, this was a powerful conversation with a powerful guest. I wish we did not have to have this show, but it has become a serious circumstantial situation especially in this state, as he mentioned, because tourism is so strong. It's become sort of that cloak behind which a lot of that stuff happens. And I personally would love to see it shut down. Just because it's this has been something that's been a part of our culture for a very, very insanely long time. We hope you'll come back again next week. We will have our next guest on Tuesday. In the meantime, we hope we'll see you soon. Thank you so much. And please share this information with everybody that you know. We want to try to get everybody as active behind this issue as we possibly can. Thanks so much.